First of all, I would like to pay all my high respect to our lecturer, Mr. Vuthy Vongmonassekar, and good evening, everyone. My name is Sola Lida. I'm from Group 3, and today I'm gonna pick up a topic which talk about a group of women activists who fought for the vote in the U.S. Now, we're gonna share some story or history about five women activists who inspire us. The first one is Susan B. Anthony. The second one is Elizabeth Cady Stanton. The third one is Elias Paul, and the fourth one is Lucy Stone, and the last one but not least is Ada B. Wells. For almost 100 years, women and men had been fighting for women's suffrage. They had made speeches, signed petitions, marched in parades, and argued over and over again that women, like men, deserve all of the rights and responsibility of citizens. And five of them didn't always agree with each other, but they put all their effort and committed to clear the right for all American women. Uh, and the first woman that I'm gonna talk about is Susan B. Anthony. She was born on February 15, 1820 in Massachusetts, United States to a Quaker family. She was really well educated because like other Quaker, her parents believed that men and women should study, live, and work equally. Before, before she joined the campaign for women's suffrages in 1845, she was a temperance activist in Rochester, New York, where she was a teacher at a girls' school. She believed that drunkenness of men was particularly hurtful to the innocent women and children who suffer from the poverty and violence it caused. Then she found that few politicians took her anti-liquid crusade seriously because she was a woman and advocating on behalf of women issues. She said that women need the vote so that the government would keep women's interests in mind. Uh, in 1853, she began to campaign for the expansion of married women's property rights. At that time, she really worked hard. She traveled to give speeches, collecting signatures for petitions, and lobbying the state legislation. And in 1856, Anthony joined the American Anti-Slavery uh, agent, arranging meetings, making speeches, putting up a poster, and distributing leaflets. Even though when she was encountered hostile mobs, armed threats, and had things thrown at her, she didn't quit because she believed that African American men and women deserve the right to vote. During the Civil War, Susan B. Anthony and fellow reformer Elizabeth Cady Stanton put their women's rights work on hold to organize the Women Loyal League. The league gathered thousands of petitions to outlaw slavery. After 13 amendments passed making slavery unlawful, Anthony and Stanton thought that the time finally came for women's suffrage. But they were really disappointed because women were excluded from voting rights. After the Civ- and after the Civil War ended, she refused to support any suffrage amendment to the Constitution unless they granted the franchise to women as well as men. This led to a dramatic schism in women rights movement between activists like Anthony, which form a group called the National Women Suffrage Association, and those who support an intermediate expansion of the citizenship of former slaves. This dramatic schism eventually faded, and in 1890, the two groups joined to form a new women's suffrage organization, the National American Women's Suffrage Association. So on, she became the second president of NASA and continued to fight for the vote until she died on March 15, 1906. So move to the next woman who was the first president of NASA, Elizabeth Cady Stanton. She was born on November 12, 1815 to a prominent family in upstate New York. In 1840, she married to abolitionists and then both of them traveled to the World Anti-Slavery Convention in London. In 1848, she, along with other activists like Lucretia Mott, and other reformers organized the first women's rights convention in Seneca Falls, New York. At that meeting, Stanton introduced her Declaration of Sentiments model on declarations of independence that detailed the inferior status of women. The Seneca Falls Convention was a mark of the beginning of the journey to campaign for women's suffrage, and from 1851, Stanton worked closely with Susan B. Anthony. As Stanton was a good orator and writer, she was really perfectly complemented by Anthony, who was good at organizing and tactics. In 1854, Stanton was invited to the New York legislature, and her speech resulted in new legislations in 1860, granted married women the right uh, of their wages and to equal guardianship of their children. She also campaigned against the ratifications of 15th Amendment to the Constitution, which guaranteed black men the right to vote but denied it to women. After the fight over the 14th and 15th Amendments, Stanton continued to push for the women's political equality. She also uh, advocated for the reform of marriage and divorce law, the expansion of educational opportunities for girls, and even the adoption of less confining clothing. She also campaigned against the oppressions of women in the name of religion. Uh, in 1876, Stanton continued to write and lecture tirelessly. She was the principal author of the Declarations of Rights for Women presented at the Centennial Exposition. In 1878, 1 year later, she drafted a federal suffrage amendment that was introduced in every Congress thereafter until women were granted the right to vote in 1920. And Elizabeth Stanton died in 1902. Now, a status of Stanton with fellow women's rights activists like Susan B. Anthony and Lucretia Mott stand in the rotunda of the USA Capitol. So let's move to the third woman of today, Alice Paul. Alice Paul was born on January 11, 1885, to a wealthy Quaker family in New Jersey. She was really well educated. She graduated from Swarthmore College with a bachelor degree in biology in 1905, while she was in London in 1906 to 1909. Paul became politically active and unafraid to use dramatic tactics to support our cause, and joined the suffragists Emmeline Parker's radical and learned how to use civil disobedience and other tactics to draw attention to her cause. In 1910, she returned to U.S. and brought those militant tactics to NASA and began to agitate for the passage of a federal suffrage amendment to the Constitution, like Susan B. Anthony had wanted badly to see. Then, in 1912, she earned a PhD from the University of Pennsylvania, and on March 13, 1913, Paul and her colleagues coordinate an anonymous suffrage parade to coincide with and distract from President Wilson's inaugurations. And in 19 in 1940, Paul left NASA organization and started her own, the Congressional Union, soon became the National Women's Party. Uh, in 1917, even U.S. entered the World War One. They keep up their process, even taking a 7-month picket of the White House for these actions. Paul and the rest of NWP suffragists were arrested and imprisoned. Then they went on a hunger strike to protest their unfair treatment. And when the news of this mistreatment got out, public sympathy swung to the side of the imprisoned activists, and they soon were released. Uh, on January 9, 1918, President Wilson finally showed support for the women who worked so hard to gain his attention in order to gain their amendment. Uh, even though she, even though he showed his own support, it did not mean that the suffragettes had gotten the right to vote or even protect them from arrested. And in August 1980, ratification came down to a vote in the conservation southern state of Tennessee. Uh, the battle over ratifications in Tennessee was known as the War of Rose, between who support this amendment, who wore yellow rose, and those who were anti, who were red. And Alice Paul once again was arrested on August August 6, 1918, while hosting an open air uh, la- rally in Lafayette Square. On January 1st, 1919, the demonstrators with the NWP began to burn President Wilson's speeches in public Delhi to make sure that they can put the pressure to the president, and they really did accomplish it. On June 14, 1919, the Senate finally passed the 19th Amendment, but the NWP had to make sure that at least 36 states ratified it, and this Tennessee State was the 36th. And finally, after such a long fight on August 18, 1920, the 19th Amendment was ratified, granted women the right to vote. And in 1923, Alice Paul proposed an equal rights amendment called EOA to the Constitution, and it said men and women shall have equal rights throughout the U.S. But this EOA has never been ratified. Uh, Alice Paul passed away on July 9, 1977, and she believed the EOA would indeed become law.
Good evening, teachers. My name is Sophal Chamroeun, and my group have two members that have Mr. Sola Lida and me, Sophal Chamroeun. After Mr. Sola Lida present and show three women, so then for me I will summarize two women that have a presence in the human rights. That is the first. She is named Lucy Stones, that she born in Massachusetts in 1818, and she's married with the Henry Blackwell in 1855, and then after she graduates from the Oberlin College in 1847, she became a traveler. In 1971, Lucy Stone and Henry Blackwell becomes publishers in the weeklies from feminist journalist newspapers. Finally, Lucy Stone died in 1893 for 21 years old. And the foremost black woman final is that his name Ida B. Wells, who was Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells was an American African American journalist. in the United States, and she's become a teacher in 14th, and then she want to found and become integrate in the groups steering for the African journalists, and then she found an AACP, that the full name is the National Associates for the Advantaged Peoples. And then Wales continue fight the civil rights, continue works with the civil rights until she died in 1931. So for me, I am that's all that I saw two women that have the passions in the human rights. And finally in this video for and thank you for listening my presentation, teachers. Thank you.